Shavuot, or Pentecost, is the celebration of the manifestation of the divine presence and his revelation to his people. This festival and its related readings will be taught in this 2-day miniseries. Pentecost was the Greek name for Shavuot, and what it is called in the Greek manuscripts of the memoirs and the letters of the New Testament. However, the entire miniseries is very much from the Orthodox Jewish perspective, but please perceive the mirrored revelation within this miniseries and the events of Acts 2. Note, the apocryphal book of Sirach was quoted by Yeshua HaMashiach, or Jesus Christ, in his Sermon on the Mount. This book, which was prevalent in the first century and attested to by the ancient Christian canons, was unfortunately removed from the KJV, as well as all the other apocryphal books, after the Anglican Reformation and its consequences. By Sivan, Ruth and Boaz had developed a romantic attraction to each other. However, due to zinut, or modesty, they did not spend time alone. By that time, Naomi began to plan, as she recognized that Boaz was a Goel. To fulfill this, she became a Shabbacanet for her daughter-in-law. She knew that Ruth would be better off if she was married. Note, Shabbacanet is a woman who serves as a matchmaker between a Jewish man and a Jewish woman. The practice derives from Abraham's servant being a matchmaker for Isaac. Upon recalling that a particular day was when Boaz and his workers would be winnowing the barley crop, she advised Ruth to bathe, anoint herself with perfume, and put on her good clothes and go down to the threshing floor near dusk. After spending the morning removing the chaff, Boaz and his workers began to celebrate the harvest while being armed due to thieves. In the bushes watching the party was Ruth, dressed in her best clothes and wearing perfume. Arising from the feast and armed, Boaz stumbled to his sleeping mat. After sunset, Ruth avoided all the armed men sprawled across the threshing floor and went to the place where she saw Boaz lay down. She carefully uncovered his feet and lay down. However, again due to zinut, or modesty, she lay down at a distance but still near to him. At around the time when the moon reached its zenith, Boaz woke and sensed someone nearby. Turning and looking towards his feet, he saw a form laying at his feet in total submission, which initially startled him. Upon asking, "Who are you?" he heard that all too familiar and sweet voice of Ruth saying, "I am your handmaid Ruth. Spread your robe over your handmaiden, because you are a redeeming kinsman." He was not only pleased to have woken up to seeing this beautiful woman, but also most likely quietly laughed. This is due to the fact that when he met her that first day, he had said, "Kanafa," or his wings. Now Ruth is saying, "Orpasta kana thaka," or spread the corner of your robe, which is a pun on the words corner and wing being similar concept. In Moab, marriage was considered simply as a man claiming a woman as his wife and living with each other. She might have thought it was a simple thing for him to claim her. Boaz, being a just man, planned on marrying her, as he was the Goel. However, he was aware of another Goel who was closer to Ruth's age. He told her that she could sleep there at his feet when there was enough light so that one could recognize a casual acquaintance from the distance of 6 feet. Boaz told Ruth no one should know that the woman came to the threshing floor. Bring the shawl you are wearing and take hold of it. As she held it, he put roughly 44 pounds of barley into it while saying, "You should not return to your mother-in-law with nothing." Afterwards, they separated. He went to some of the elders and the younger Goel, while Ruth returned home to Naomi. Hearing the door open, Naomi called out to see if it was Ruth that had entered the house. In the next few moments, Ruth explained everything that had happened in the cool of the night. Naomi replied, "My daughter, just stay where you are until you learn how the matter comes out, for the man will not rest unless he resolves the matter today." Boaz summoned 10 of the 23 elders to the city gate, or to the town's gate, soon after sunrise. In court, there are only a minimum of 2 needed witnesses. Boaz wanted there to be more than enough witnesses to testify if they were needed in the house of judgment, now known as a rabbinical court. When the unnamed Goel passed by, Boaz called out to him and invited him to sit down across from him. Leviticus 25 verses 23 through 28 states that land is to be sold with a clause for redeeming the property. This clause was threefold. In the scenario that a man had become poor and sold some of his land, his next of kin could buy that property so it stayed in the family. If the seller became rich enough to redeem it himself after having sold it, he was to calculate the number of years the land was sold for, refund the access to its buyer, and return to his property. If the seller lacked sufficient means to get it back for himself, the buyer would return the land, or would retain the land until the year of Yobel, or Jubilee. Boaz looked at the Goel and said, "The parcel of land which used to belong to our relative Elimelech is being offered for sale by Naomi, who has returned from the plain of Moab." Note, this means that Boaz serves as a solicitor for Naomi. I thought I should tell you about it and say, buy it in the presence of the people sitting here and in the presence of the leaders of my people. If you want to redeem it, redeem it. But if it was not to be redeemed, then tell me, so that I can know, because there is no one else in line to redeem it, and I'm after you. Note, this was per Leviticus 25:23 through 28, as stated previously. The younger Goel said, "I want to redeem it." Boaz, most likely concerned but confident, said, "The same day you buy the field from Naomi, you must also buy Ruth, the woman from Moab, the wife of the deceased son, in order to raise up in the name of the deceased son an heir for his property." Note, buying Ruth in context means that the Goel is to marry the widow of Mahlon. This is an application of the Yibam, or Levirate marriage. The younger Goel declined the sale, either because he had no intent of ever being married, which contradicts the intentions of Genesis 1:28 and 2:18 through 25, or he was already married. In Deuteronomy 25, verses 5 through 10, the true Yibam law was described. If a man had brothers and died childless, it was demanded that the next bachelor among the brothers would marry her. The first child, namely a son that was conceived and born out of their union, would be counted as the heir of his deceased brother. All other children would be considered between the man between the woman and her former brother-in-law. On the contrary, if the bachelor brother-in-law refused to perform Yibum, the widow could take him to the city elders, and after he still refused to marry her, the city elders would decree that the Haliza ceremony was to occur. The Haliza ceremony involved the widow approaching her bachelor brother-in-law in the presence of the council, pulling his sandal off his foot, spitting in his face, and saying, "This is what is done to the man who refuses to build up his brother's family." The reluctant bachelor's family would from then on be known as Bet Halus Hanala, the family of him who had his sandal removed. The younger Goel, since he declined to marry Ruth, removed his right sandal. The central part of the Haliza ceremony was dishonor. As there was no dishonor which occurred during this meeting between Boaz, the 10 elders, and the unnamed Goel, spitting in his face was not necessary. Instead, he handed the sandal to Boaz. Boaz turned to his fellow elders and addressed them, saying, "You are witnesses today that I am purchasing from Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Chilion and Mahlon. Also, I am inquiring as to my wife Ruth, the woman from Moab, the wife of Mahlon, in order to raise up in the name of the deceased an heir for his property, so that the name of the deceased will not be cut off from his kinsmen, and from the gate of his palace or his place. You are witnesses today." From the elders admitted to being witnesses, or they admitted being witnesses. Furthermore, the elders requested that Adonai allow Ruth to become like the cousin/wives of Jacob. They petitioned Boaz to do worthy actions and increase his notoriety in the area of Bethlehem. No, it is likely that the elders were wishing Boaz to become famous even up to the city of Jebus. If this is a true conjecture, then it might be that Boaz would hopefully become known in likely a 6-mile radius around Bethlehem. They also prayed for Adonai to bless them with children who would be like Perez, Boaz's great-great-great-great-grandfather. Boaz soon after that married Ruth. Not only did he retain his own land, but he inherited the land of Elimelech, Mahlon, and Chilion. In 1230 BC, Boaz fathered Obed. Possibly by 1226 BC, Naomi's soul descended into paradise in peace, while Yisrael descended back into idolatry. Note, according to Talmudic tradition, there were 2 compartments or lands which were separated by a large void or river incapable of being traversed. It must be stated that water is an image of nothingness in rabbinical tradition. The higher land was reserved for the righteous dead, which would become known as paradise. This was opposed to by Shiloh, which was the lower land reserved for unrighteous dead, which became known as the Christian hell. It was to paradise that Naomi's soul departed. Before the harrowing of hell, no righteous soul had gone to heaven except for Enoch, who had been assumed around 1,900 years prior, and Elijah, who would be assumed to heaven over 370 years later. Paradise is now empty and desolate, while Sheol is still populated by the millions of souls in perdition. When Obed was 26 years of age, Judge Ehud, who assassinated King Eglon of Moab, passed away. That same year, the Hazarites invaded the northern tribes, as is attested by Judges 4, verses 2 through 3a. Note, the Hazarites were a city-state of the Canaanites. The late 1100s BC were a pivotal time for the period of the Confederation of the 12 Tribes. A civil war erupted between the House of Eleazar and the House of Ithamar. At the conclusion of the civil war, the office of the high priest was transferred from the House of Eleazar to the House of Ithamar. Eli became the first Ithamarite high priest beginning in 1121 BC. In 1118 BC, Jair of Gilead succeeded Tola, son of Puah, as judge over the central tribal lands. In 1106 BC, a son was born to Elkanah, the 15 times great-grandson of Kohath, son of Levi, or Levi, son of Jacob. His name was Samuel. The following year, that was the son's name that was born to Elkanah. The following year, Obed fathered Jesse, who in turn became one of the 23 elders of Bethlehem and owner of the 4 properties that Obed, his father, had inherited from Boaz. In 1048 BC, which was the 3rd year of King Saul's reign, as he began reigning in 1050 BC, Jesse, son of Obed of Bethlehem, fathered his firstborn son named Eliab. Over the next 3 years, he fathered a son a year. Abinadab in 1047, Shema in 1046 BC, and Nethanel in 1045. In 1042 BC, he fathered possibly twins or half-brothers, Radai and Ozem. Possibly the following year there was a 7th son born to him. On Sivan 4th, 1040 BC, Jesse fathered an 8th son. When this 8th son was 15, he became a national hero. From the ages of 15 to 22, he was a national hero, fierce warrior, gained 600 warriors under him, and became the son-in-law of the king, as described in 1 Samuel 17:49 through 19:17. From the ages of 22 to 26, he was a fugitive from the king of Israel and public enemy number 1. 1 Samuel 19:18 through 26:25. From the ages of 26 to 30, he was a mercenary for the king of the city-state of Gath and owner of Ziklag. 1 Samuel 27:1 through 2 Samuel 2:3. From the ages of 30 to 70, he was King David. 2 Samuel 2:4 through 1 Kings 2:11.